Hey, here we are. It's another week has gone by, and so we're here for the Green Umbrella Live Lunch. We are live on the Green Umbrella Facebook page, the YouTube channel, my LinkedIn, and I realised I've had one of those days where I hit live before I really thought about what I was going to say, even though I've been saying the same thing every Thursday at 12 noon for the last, don't know, how many weeks is it now? 63 weeks, and I still have to think. There's like, do you know, some people have a natural memory, don't they? They're able to like recall quotes and facts and things really, really easily. I've never been able to do that. I've never been able to like learn things by rote and stuff like that. Always struggled, but there you go. Something you didn't know about me, or maybe you guys did know, that I forget things. So the purpose of this show is not to just listen to me ramble. Purpose of this is for us to have a catch up, talk about what's been going on over the course of the last week, both within the business, within the team, and also social media news wise. So people that tune into this regularly know Mark's never got anything much to say. So should we just come to you first? We'll just get you out the way.
That's it, and that's it. I can turn the camera and the mic off then, can't I? Sorted.
No.
I can just listen.
So come on, you must have been working on some stuff this week. There must have been some questions that have popped up that are worth discussing.
I don't know. I've just been so busy. We've had another website go live, another one that's just about done. So I've literally, that's all I've been doing.
So I'm going to tell the world what you've been whinging at me about this week. How about that? How do you like them apples?
That could be anything.
So we had a conversation the other day. Actually, it might have been Friday last week, about privacy policies, and we were looking at sort of privacy policies, cookie policies, that kind of thing. Not so much talking about sites that go in live now, but we were talking about some of the sites we've been looking after for a while, where we know they've changed stuff tracking wise and that sort of thing, and the fact that people just don't keep on top of this stuff, do they? They don't. It's like you produce your website, you create your privacy policy. This thing called GDPR happened in 2018, and maybe you updated it then. But the conversation we were having was just around the fact that people sort of do it and forget about it.
Yeah, I think that's key, really, isn't it? It needs to be kept up to date. People need to think about what's changed in their business, not just on their website as well. That's obviously the key thing. So you might be collecting data through your website, but you need to be telling people what you're doing with that data, once you've saved it away. And obviously processes change for a lot of businesses, and people just don't think about that kind of thing very often. It's one of those things, like you say, they think it's a sort of set and go, and then perhaps think about it 5-10 years later when, oh no, that's not very good, sort of thing. So yeah, it is one of those things that we will be reminding some of our clients that they do need to keep on top of that kind of thing.
Absolutely. So the kinds of things that people need to look out for, like one of the things we talked about. So what started the conversation was we were talking about some of the tracking scripts that are on people's websites. So Google Analytics, the Facebook pixel are kind of like the two key ones, really. But if people have got LinkedIn Insights tags set up, that's another sort of cookie that's in existence that's collecting data on people on your website. You might be using some sort of email marketing software that has an element of tracking where, like HubSpot, for example, you can set up some scripts in there that goes on your website. So when you're doing your email marketing, that can, like people clicking through, landing on your site, following them through what they're doing on your site, that can all be tracked as well. So if you've ever had to set up something like that, because of your software, your tech stack, and you've moved away from something, having a look at that stuff, and I guess removing that sort of stuff from your site can help speed your site up as well, Mark.
Yeah, I think the more sort of scripts and things you've got running, obviously they've got to load at some point. So yeah, if you don't need them, then definitely get rid of it.
Yeah, it's amazing the difference that site speed has from an SEO perspective. it's kind of, you look at it and you're like, oh, my site loads in like, less than a second. But then actually, when you look at the technical SEO side of it, it's those milliseconds can actually make quite a difference from an SEO perspective. So, and it's all these little granular changes that all add up from a technical SEO perspective that like really helps improve the way that your site performs. So yeah, interesting. I think it's interesting. It's one of those things when you say it's interesting, you hear it out loud and you go, yeah, people have probably just switched off.
No. It's like that you're so interested in spreadsheets, Christina. I'd say they're not that interesting, but you love them.
I do love a good spreadsheet. I do. I put one together this morning for a client, actually. So there you go. Cool. Okay. So Emily, come on then. What have you been up to this week? What have you got to share with us?
So I've been busy as per, but what I wanted to talk about was TikTok again, second week in a row now, I think. But they have launched a new campaign called hashtag createkindness, which is all about sort of encouraging inclusion and combating, that was the word I was trying to think of earlier, combating bullying within the app. So yeah, I thought that was really good. It was really good that they've obviously noticed that. I'm going to take Data Davies' limelight, seeing as she's not here. And apparently, a third of users that use TikTok are under the age of 14, which I thought was insane. I didn't realise that at all. So obviously, sort of bullying online is quite prevalent, but bullying, particularly for younger children under the age of 14, that's something that possibly as an adult, or I'd hope that as an adult you wouldn't partake in, but as a child, children aren't fully aware of sort of the effects of that. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting. They're doing a hashtag challenge around the hashtags, so obviously encouraging users to use the hashtag. But the other thing that they are doing is they've got animated style videos. I watched one of them. It's actually very clever. So it's an animation, and then at the end of the animation is based on a real person, and then the real person sort of reveals himself at the end. So I guess sort of the premise behind that is that I guess online it's sort of quite faceless often, but what it was trying to imply is that sort of behind every comment, behind every account, there's a real human being there. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting. And the final thing that I noticed was underneath one of these videos, it had a caption which said, "Consider before you comment." So we were actually talking about this just before we went live, but I know Instagram is, I believe, are they in the process, Christina, of doing that, or sort of having a warning within comments, or have they done it? I haven't noticed it, but like I said, I'm not a troll.
So Instagram, one of their announcements, I don't know, maybe I want to say about 6-9 months ago. Certainly in the last year, they announced that they were testing a feature where, let's say you'd seen a post and you commented, and there was some language in there that was, deemed to be unsavoury, deemed to be not nice. That actually something would flag up and basically say, are you sure you want to post this? So, and the idea being, again, it's more aimed at the younger users, and just to add that sort of filter that is like, sometimes people could be really reactive rather than responsive. When you react to something, quite often you say something you don't want, you regret later.
Yeah, so I was listening to sort of along those lines. I was listening to a podcast. I've started listening to, it's Jamie Lang and Francis Bull, I think that's how you say his surname, and they've got this podcast called Private Parts Podcast, but basically it's just them chatting. It's quite funny, but then within that they have a lot of serious conversations about sort of bullying and mental health and things like that. And something that they're talking about actually, and weirdly in the podcast that I'm listening to this morning, is there is, I believe, hang on, let me get his name because I've got it on my phone here. I think he's a rugby player, but I might be wrong. Danny Kerr, is he a rugby player, Mark? Yeah.
He is,
so Danny Kerr is on this podcast that I'm listening to. And basically what happened is Jamie Lang, who's from Made in Chelsea, years ago, he tweeted Danny Care after a rugby game and basically trolled him and said, why on earth is Danny Care like on the pitch, let alone in the team, something like this, and was like really rude, a few swear words thrown in there. And what happened is, sort of a few months later, because they hang out in the same crowds, in the same areas, Danny Care saw Jamie Lang and went over to him. And apparently Danny Care had always said to his friends, if I ever see him, I'm going to confront him about this. And obviously they saw him and his friends were egging him on and going, oh, look, there's that push boy over there that trolled you on Twitter. Like, why don't you go and say hello? So he went over to Jamie Lang. Obviously, Jamie Lang was terrified and said, what was it that you said to me on Twitter? And apparently Jamie said, oh, it wasn't me. And they said, well, it came from your Twitter account. And he said, it was my management. So he was terrified. But obviously he's got Danny Care on this podcast now and it's all fine. And they've all sorted it out. But they're just having this quite serious conversation about actually people quite often say things online and they don't necessarily think about it, and were you to see that person face to face, would you say it to their face? And obviously Jamie Lang wouldn't, because he didn't, he was terrified. But it's quite interesting, and that's why I think maybe, although obviously they're testing that functionality on Instagram, perhaps on other platforms like Twitter and Facebook, I don't know if they're testing it there, but if they're not, then I personally think they should, because it might make people take a step back and think, actually, would I say this to somebody's face? There's a real person there, and if you wouldn't, then why would you tweet it or put it on Facebook?
Yeah, I think like I said, I know it was announced on Instagram, and it might have been in line with like anti-bullying week or an anti-bullying month or something like that. And there were a few platforms talking about doing similar things. But I think the issue is always going to be with the, essentially the technology that picks up these things. Because we've all seen it, things like everyone on here has experienced like a Facebook ad that didn't go through because the AI or whatever has picked something up and gone, actually, or whether it's AI or machine learning, it's kind of going, oh yeah, that doesn't work, but actually there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. So I think it's going to be one of those things that it would be fantastic to have it, but how that gets developed, I think it's always going to be like a long time in the making, because if you think just like the language changes.
Yeah, I don't think necessarily, I mean, in an ideal world, it would stop those comments anyway. But I think even if it had just a warning popped up for specific trigger words that then made them think about it, they could still post it if they were that way inclined and decide they wanted to post it anyway. But that possibly, I imagine, could be something that would be easier to develop than literally stopping somebody from commenting. Because, like you said, I think that will be much more complicated, because then people are going to get comments stopped that aren't in any way, shape or form sort of bullying or trolling or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. It is tricky. It's a tricky one. Cool. Okay, so anything else you want to share with the class today? Anything else going on?
No, not from me. Pick on Jane now.
Well, just before I do. So picking up on the TikTok thing again. So if we think back to like this, I guess probably this time last year, 18 months ago, and maybe 2 years ago, actually. God, time's getting on, isn't it? TikTok was kind of like suddenly on the rise. Okay, it was sort of towards the beginning of lockdown, so I guess this like March last year, people were starting to really embrace TikTok, and we had like Reese Witherspoon doing dances with her kids that like really just kind of all of a sudden we saw the user demographic of TikTok shift up again. Okay, and it was like the yummy mummies, we'll call ourselves, were suddenly like interested in this platform as well. And at the time, I sort of said, this type of content is here to stay. Whether TikTok survives or not, it's that type of content is here now. It's not going to go anywhere. And since that time, we saw Reels roll out, which feels
That's
like
really
a
hard to
funny
say.
phrase to say, yeah. So it's like, I like to think I'm right about things. I like to think I know my stuff, even though the rug could be pulled out from underneath me. But I was actually on a call last night with a couple of different people. So there's an organisation that's done some research around TikTok and what works and all that kind of stuff. And there was actually a really interesting lady from TikTok themselves on the call as well. And the conversation they were having is that TikTok, it needs to be considered as like the focus needs to be on content rather than social connection. And I thought that was really interesting because obviously content's important everywhere. Okay, but when we look at Facebook, when we look at LinkedIn, when we look at Instagram as well, to a certain respect, we're really thinking about building relationships all the time, especially if we want to get business out of it, right? LinkedIn, most of the people following us are B2B. They're using LinkedIn. Yes, they're producing content, but they're using their personal profiles to really improve those relationships, build those relationships, take them to the next level where a sales conversation can happen. So I thought it was really interesting that we're kind of looking at TikTok in this sort of opposite view. And as they went through the presentation, there were other things that just made me think, like when we think about TikTok, and this transfers into, if people are using Instagram a lot and they're really into Reels, it kind of transfers into that part of Instagram as well. We need to think about this content and really turn everything on its head. So it's not about who we're serving, it's about who we're producing. It's about what we're producing, even who we're producing. That's another conversation, right? So we've got to make sure that what we produce is really impactful. Now, then when we think about sales funnels and marketing funnels, and it's like you always make your ask, you always have that call to action. It's like it's towards the end of that journey we're going to take people on. Okay, we want to make people aware of us. We want to nurture them, and we get to a certain point where we feel like we've built that up, and then we make the ask. And again, what they were saying is, from a TikTok perspective, the type of content that works, actually the ask is there front and center in the first seconds. It's like as soon as that video starts, the first like 3 seconds of that video, your ask needs to be there. You can then remove that and go into the positioning and the value that you're adding and all that kind of stuff through the creative that way. And I just think it's really interesting that we're seeing these different forms of content coming in now, where we've got the standards that we know and love and we get results from, but we've now got this kind of like new wave of content creation coming in, this new wave of this sort of social creative. And one of the trends we're expecting for next year again is very much, it's about ephemeral content, so stuff that disappears, and very much about repurposing content. They're the two sort of big things that people are already talking about, like being the focuses in 2022 marketing wise. So I just thought it's like TikTok. A year ago I was saying like we need to pay attention to this form of content, and like I said, literally last night I was on a call and it was just stat after stat about how to put this content together and make it work. And it is kind of, we've got to turn everything we know on its head from that perspective, but already we're starting to see that spill into other platforms like Reels on Instagram. Obviously we've got stories on LinkedIn that will probably take another 2 or 3 years before they really lift off. But I don't know, it's just really interesting. I've just found it really, really interesting. Normally it's all about, if the targeting's not right, it doesn't matter how good your creative is. If the targeting isn't right, you're stuffed. On TikTok, it's like 70% of getting it right is actually the creative. It's really interesting. Don't know if anyone's got any thoughts on that, bearing in mind that even when we were prepping for this, I didn't mention that at all. So you've got no idea what I was going to say.
No, I guess it's just, yeah, like we said before, there's always constant changes, isn't there? And Christina, you and I had a conversation recently about obviously having to stay on top of them and everything in what we do at Green Umbrella. So I think it's yeah, I wonder if there'll be other platforms or other things that develop that go more along that route rather than what we see at the moment, or what I guess the more common type of content is at the moment, and the more common goal really. But yeah, it's interesting. And like I've said before, I haven't actually posted on TikTok. I just watch TikTok, which I can waste hours watching those videos.
It's like you just get lost in it. It's the if you get easily distracted, then you've really got to be careful about how you use TikTok, because it sucks you in.
Yeah.
Interestingly, there is something in the algorithm on TikTok. Let's say you've and I haven't done masses on there, don't get me wrong, but let's say you've done a few posts, you kind of take a break away from it. When you come back and you post again, let's say a few months has passed and you post again, it's like in the algorithm, it gives you this massive push. So it's almost like those creators get this ego boost, let's say, and then to encourage them to do the next post and the next post.
Oh, that's quite clever.
So it's quite.
Maybe I should post something, and I'll get millions of likes or followers.
It's all about the views on TikTok. All about the views. Yeah. So anyone listening to this, if you have been looking at TikTok, if you've been thinking about engaging in that, and I don't know, like I said, it's definitely not a platform I'm dominating, but one I am reading about and sort of engaging and perusing and researching and all that sort of stuff. So I have got some information around TikTok. If anyone wants that, then I can bore you on a one-to-one basis. How about that? Cool. So Jane, let's come to you then. Let's pick on you, to use Emily's words. How have you been this week? What's been going on?
Yeah, busy as ever, new clients coming on board and things like that. So, but yeah, news-wise, so last week I talked about Twitter Blue and that subscription service to that. But the next thing that Twitter are testing and hope maybe rolling out soon is the super follow. So if you are on Twitter and you've got more than 10,000 followers yourself and you tweet regularly, so that's 25 tweets in 30 days, then you can monetize your Twitter account basically by getting super followers. So basically, if anyone wants to see extra content, so newsletters, special content that other people don't see, maybe discount codes and things like that, they can choose to subscribe to your Twitter account for $4.99 a month to get that extra content. So I just thought it was an interesting thing to talk about, as to, again, who would pay for that, what you would put on it. You'd want some value out of it for $4.99 a month just for one account that you're following. But I guess if you every month get £10 off, something that you were buying, then I guess it's worth it, isn't it? So, yeah, what does anybody else think about that?
I think I would if I was going to get a discount code, but I wouldn't for a newsletter, if I'm being honest.
What about you, Mark? Would you subscribe? So what was it, $4.99? Would you subscribe $4.99 for Saints, for example, if it meant that you were going to get footage that was only being served to people under that, or private interviews? It could be invitation to events, that kind of stuff.
Probably not, to be honest. I think there's enough content out there, isn't there? And so unless they're going to paywall everything, then no.
You're not a true fan, Matt. I'm going to write to them.
I've got my season ticket. That's enough.
I was going to say, what if it gave you like 5% off your season ticket?
I'd have to do the maths.
Then he's in.
All comes down to the maths.
So it's really interesting because there is something called the creator economy. Okay, have you guys heard that term before? I know it's not something we've really discussed previously. But the creator economy, it's all about the fact that, so podcast, for example, Apple now is essentially launching this. I think it actually launches on the 15th of June, where, with my podcast, people could pay and they pay a small amount per month. And in exchange, I would provide them with additional content, essentially, that only people get from that. There is, we all know about like Bitcoin and Ethereum and all that kind of stuff. Well, there's actually now sort of cryptocurrencies that you can create that are like, we'll call them creator coins. Okay, so for example, and this is something I've looked into. Again, I haven't talked to you guys about it, but actually, obviously, we put out a lot of free content. Okay, and if we go back 5 years, we started to see apps and things where, let's say someone's creating loads of content and you feel like you owe them something, you could buy them a coffee, let's say. And there was an app where you could essentially give someone a small amount of money in exchange for the knowledge that they share with you, to kind of reward them. So it's a very, very similar thing. And as we've seen the trend in social kind of become more community driven over the last few years, you know, people are creating Slack communities or Facebook groups, or there's something called Discord now as well, where people are kind of think like a Slack kind of experience, but on just on a different platform. And actually what happens is that people can pay to have access to this thing, or maybe because they've bought that creator coin, they can now buy services from that creator. I say, you know, if we owned that coin, if people were buying green, GU coins, actually that creates value. That becomes something that we can use to buy and sell services, that sort of stuff. We could award coins to loyal clients, and essentially, as a creator, you create your own currency. So that's a very, very loose, probably overcomplicated, very unrehearsed explanation of what that is. But it's really, really interesting because, like I said, we've got this with Twitter. It's being launched from a Apple Podcast perspective on the 15th. Facebook already have something called a supporter program, which I don't know if you've sort of come across that. That's been active for about sort of, 2-3 years. That's been active. And I'm only really just like, they're still rolling it out really slowly. So like there's this thing, it's not new, but it's like all of a sudden we're seeing a real push on it again. And the creator coin, the creator currency it's really interesting to watch it unfold.
Well, Facebook had Facebook stars as well, don't they?
Yes.
So if you like something, you can buy stars and give it to them, can't you?
Yeah. So like that. Yeah. So again, but and that's what it is. It's like you're, as a user, Emily thinks everything I say is awesome. Okay. And she's watching the live stream and she's like, actually, I'm going to buy some stars from Facebook and I'm going to give them to Christina to say thank you. And what's happening is the content creators, I'm saying, if you want me to give you a shout out, then send me 500 stars. If you like what I'm saying, then, you can use the stars feature to essentially tip me. And that, and there's other platforms that are literally, I can't remember, my mind's gone blank. There is a platform now that has a tipping service. So Twitter I think it might be Clubhouse actually. Do you think it's Twitter? It might. I can't.
It might be both. Twitter definitely will have a tipping thing.
Yeah, So it's kind of like it's all being developed. It's all being rolled out now. I think the problem is Robert's on LinkedIn. He's just commented. So yeah, great thing there. Really good way of thinking about it. It's your own bartering system that others recognise, and it's a bartering system that others are buying into. I think that's the really, really clever part of it as well. But yeah, like I said, it's like it's all happening. The problem is that the people that get access to this stuff first are the people with, the millions of followers, the millions, the hundreds of thousands, that kind of stuff. When you think about monetizing YouTube, the number of views you need to be able to have in order to activate those monetization features to be able to earn from your content, the bar's always been really, really high in terms of being able to access these things. And as this stuff is rolled out, it's going to start at the top and sort of trickle down. but I think it's something definitely worth watching.
Do you think it's something that's going to be, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but something that people are going to pick up on and actually do? So that, do you think people will start buying these things and paying or tipping in this way? Just
they're doing it already.
Because I find that really interesting, because I feel like it's something that people have got so used to having this content for free, or sort of the creators making money in other ways, sort of through advertisers and that sort of thing, that I find it interesting that people would start paying for it. Or I don't know, obviously it is working, but I think it's just such a shift.
So you've got your free content. Okay, what you're paying for is that, okay, I get to be part of something. There is an additional bonus in there. So there is there's a guy in America who is like, he's just amazing at this stuff. The way he's got it set up is fantastic. So he's got a community on Discord, and basically it's, you know, if you own some of his coin, he runs events that you can only access if you own the coin.
Yeah. So
it's
like
I could buy to buy an hour of this guy's time is probably, I don't know, let's say it's $2,000 to have a 1 hour session with this guy. Okay, can I afford to spend 2 hours? Can I afford to spend $2,000 1 hour with someone? They got to be pretty good for me to make that investment, right? So actually, I could be buying his coin one at a time until I've saved that amount of money, knowing that I can spend that with him. Maybe because I'm buying it with his coin, it's only costing me $1,800 instead of $2,000. And along, like, as I've been on that, I've been able to, still get a lot of support from him, because I've been able to have access to content that is essentially paywalled.
Yeah.
So you are getting something beyond the free. From the creator's perspective, it's all about building loyalty. It's 100% about being loyalty. It's about creating some value around your content as well. So, I mean, I don't even know how many free downloads and things like that we've got on our website. Okay, I'm constantly thinking about what needs to be updated, or what can we produce next that's going to be new. And actually, Mark, I've got something mapped out that you need to work on. I need to send that to you. Oh yes, another poster. So, all that stuff is there for free. Some of it, you've got to give us your email address to access it. So it's kind of transactional in that way. But, when you say something's free, what value are you putting on it? When you say, actually, if you buy this coin, it might be $5 to buy that coin, but all of a sudden you can now access all of these resources, then all of a sudden we're putting a value on that content that is more than zero. And when it's less than a cup of coffee, when it's less than a chai latte at Starbucks, it's like, it's really affordable. You've got people selling programs at like, £10,000-15,000 to work with them for a year, or you can access this thing that's going to cost you like £3 a month. You don't get the one-to-one, but you get all of this specific content. I think it's actually really, really interesting. Really interesting.
I guess it's like what we've talked about before, fear of missing out, isn't it? And if all these people are getting all this extra content and involved in this secret community, and you're like, I want some of that. So then you're going to pay.
And again, it's a funnel. All it is we've got these people aware of us. They're interested in working with us. Maybe one of their blocks is affordability. Maybe it comes down to budget.
True.
Okay. Well, actually, they can't afford that big ticket item, but they can afford something in between. Yeah. So, again, as a creator, maybe it's going to take you 2 years to be in a position to afford my services. you can sit on my database, or I can be earning a little bit of residual income from you in the interim, a little bit of passive income from you in the interim. It's really interesting.
Definitely.
Obviously, you buggers won't sign up for it, but you know, it's if you look at, you know, if you're into the social media world and you're looking at some of the big names when it comes to social media and content creation and that kind of thing, they've all got these programs running already. There's like Instagram, like the kings and queens of Instagram that are, you know, the Instagram leaders in the world kind of thing. And it's like there's one thing that is like $5 a month, and you get 2 video tutorials every week for that money that isn't shared publicly anywhere else. So if I want to go to that particular creator that I have a lot of trust and respect for, I can look at the free stuff on the YouTube, but for $5 a month, actually, I get these couple of videos every week, and I get some, you know, I get invited to, well, they were face-to-face events and things like that, like workshops, that kind of thing. So, yeah. So Robert's put on LinkedIn, that's a message for you, Emily. It's not a million miles away from Tesco's, Tesco's points and that kind of stuff. And then Paul Green on Facebook's picking on me. I'm saying really interesting a lot today, apparently. I'm very interested in the world. What can I tell you? What's another word for interesting?
Exciting.
What's really curious is the fact that you kind of, you know, Emily and Mark, you both sort of went, why? Don't get it. In the like most of these trends, they always start in the US. It's like things start in Silicon Valley and they just kind of spread from there, right? This creator economy stuff is massive in the States, absolutely massive. So I think we will see more and more of it over here in the next couple of years, just with people adopting it. And it's that, you know, it's like that thing with technology, isn't it? It's like there's like a graph, like a bell graph, and it's kind of you've got the early adopters and the people that are sort of just behind that, and then the people that are always late to the party. So yeah.
But I mean, I think it's not actually anything particularly new, though. That's the thing. It's been happening in various sort of artistic elements for a
100%,
long time.
100%.
That's the thing. So you can go and buy an album from, you know, your favorite artist, and you get a signed version for the same price by signing up to their sort of, I can't think what the platform is. There's a couple of music platforms.
It's no different to okay, Emily, if you had to go through Covent Garden every week, okay, and there was it depends what the trending item was, I guess, but let's say you go through Covent Garden every week, okay, and you've got the street performers there. Okay, it's no different to every week as you walk through, dropping £2 into, you know, those, you know, their hats or guitar cases or whatever it might be. It's absolutely no different.
Yeah, true.
We think it's new because it's new technology.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah, we know you don't like change.
I think as well it's because it's on the social platforms that have been free forever, though, as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I think
that's where this is. Hang on a minute, this was free and now you want me to pay. Whereas before, those other things, you always paid or you always did that or whatever. And I think that's where this one is a sort of mental block to get over. That you feel like, well, this has always been free. Now, why do you want me to pay for it? I guess
where you've explained it, Christina, is you're not paying for the same thing. You're paying for the exclusivity of the other content, which at first I didn't really think of it in that way. I thought of it in the way that Jane just explained it, in that, why on earth should I pay for this when I can get it for free? Like, without being an unsupportive follower. I don't know.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, so anything else kind of cropped up this week that we want to chat through? We've covered quite a lot, actually, in only 40 minutes. How efficient we are.
Very.
You vaguely mentioned the Instagram algorithm thing. Don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, so, okay, but maybe I've got the wrong, I don't know, maybe I've got a bit of a funny attitude about it. So Instagram released an article this week that basically the idea was that it explains the algorithm. Now, Instagram's a bit of a messy platform. You've got your posts, you've got your stories, you've got reels, you've got IGTV. There's loads going on this platform, right? So in order to make sure that the right people are seeing your post and all that kind of thing, there's a lot to consider. And as you read through this article, it's throwing like so much information at you that it's like anything else. Okay. An analogy I've used in the past, it's like baking a cake. At the end of the day, if you're going to make let's say we're making a birthday cake, and well, I think it's Mark's birthday soon. Is it? Is it Mark's birthday next? Definitely. Anyway, and so let's say I was going to make the effort. Never happened before, but let's say that's what's going to happen. I was going to make an effort baking a cake. I need flour, eggs, butter, sugar. Okay. Then I've got a sponge. Okay. Now, essentially, when it comes to the algorithms, there are some basic things, and it doesn't matter what platform you're on. It's the same everywhere. You've got these basic things we need to get right. All the other stuff is like, that's the icing on the cake. Or do we use vanilla essence, or are we going to use orange blossom essence? Are we going to use chocolate to flavor it instead? Are we going to use raspberry jam and cream, or butter icing, or whatever it might be? Are we going to, do ice a Saints rugby shirt on top of it, or do some little, fondant flowers to make it look this amazing thing? The thing is with all these algorithms, there's all these little bits of, I want to use the word spice, like I'm really cool. I'm not really cool, but there's all these other bits that are kind of put on the top of those basic ingredients, right? And even in this article about the Instagram algorithm, it essentially comes down to a few things. Your content has to be relevant. Okay, it has to be good. It has to be relevant. If when the platforms are deciding who they're going to show your content to, they're looking for the relevance of your content. They're looking at, what the affinity is. So actually, if this post is going to be shown to Mark, well, actually, it's going to be shown to Mark because he has an affinity to it. He's been looking at related content, maybe. Okay. We're going to look at activity. So the last time that Mark was on LinkedIn, what's happened since then? And the content that's happened since then that is most relevant, that the platform thinks has the most affinity, that's what's going to be served to Mark. All right, and there's also some historic stuff in there as well. If Mark's been engaging with Green Umbrella every time he accesses Instagram, then he's going to see Instagram content. So whether we're thinking about what we're putting together and who we're serving and that sort of stuff, or whether we're trying to decide, okay, what is Facebook going to show us? What is Instagram going to show us? It always comes down to those four things: the content relevance, the affinity, our activity as users of the platform, and our historic usage. Everything else is just flavouring and icing and run-outs or fondant flowers. And that's the reality. Like if we look at reels on Instagram, if you create your reel in Instagram, you will get more reach if you use all the little tools within the platform than if you just posted the video. If you create something in TikTok and use all the editing features there, but then you use that video, upload it into reels on Instagram, because it's content from TikTok that has that TikTok stamp on it, it kind of gets downplayed in the algorithm. So it's like all of that stuff is kind of like, you know, let's get into the nitty gritty and the detail of it. But if you create crap content that has no relevance, you haven't built an audience that cares about you, you're not sharing it on a platform that the people you want to reach are actually using on a regular basis, and you haven't given people the opportunity to engage with you previously, it's not going to work. So it's like people get excited when we see these articles, and it's like they all tell us exactly the same thing. And even with all the developments, all the changes and everything else, it comes down to those 4 things. So that's my 2 penny.
Mic drop.
It's like we're 45 minutes into live lunch. It's that moment where everything goes silent because Christina's been ranting again. I can't help it. I can't help it. But yeah, I mean, okay, so obviously, Jane, I think you looked at that article as well. Was there anything that you noticed in there that kind of made you go, oh, okay, that's interesting?
Not really, to be honest, only that it said there were multiple algorithms, which wasn't actually something I'd really thought about. I always assumed there's sort of one for each platform, even working here, and I hadn't really thought about the fact they had so many and they're all working alongside each other, all looking at different things. But other than that, it's like you said, it is really the main important bit.
Yeah, like I say, Instagram's just so messy that it's like you've got 4 platforms in one. You know, IGTV is like YouTube, Reels is like TikTok, the feed, essentially. So the feed is Instagram's at the end of the day. Like even if you said, okay, well, the feed is like Facebook, and stories is like Snapchat. So actually, it's kind of like we've got 4 platforms in one, which is why Instagram's so messy. I think it's really hard to actually drive without a lot of effort and a lot of focus. It's actually really hard to drive a successful strategy on Instagram. There you go. Cool. Right, we are almost up on the hour. It feels like a good time to draw things to a natural close. We possibly have a little bit of an announcement, because next week is Thursday, the 17th of June. Anyone watching this that's in the world of recruitment, there is an event happening. UK Recruiter are running the UK Recruitment Technology Showcase. So I'm actually I'm doing a speed pitch there, and I'm doing 2 sessions as part of that as well. And Amanda, unfortunately, she's had tech issues today, although we think she might be making excuses. I was here last week when I had a dodgy Wi-Fi signal, so come on, Amanda, sort it out. But next week, Amanda is delivering a webinar for our friends at Iconic Offices over in Ireland. She won't be in Ireland, that's where they are. So we might, yeah. I mean, I said to these guys, they should just do live lunch themselves without me and Amanda, but they...
We've said no.
Yeah. So feel free to drop a few comments below, put a bit of pressure on the guys and encourage them to do it. But like I said, realistically, it looks like for the first time, we might actually have to skip a week of live lunch. So, yeah, if you don't get your usual announcement Thursday morning that Green Umbrella is scheduled to go live, or Christina's scheduled to go live, that is why. But fingers crossed, we'll be able to work out times and we'll be able to make it happen, even if it's a shorter session. On that note, have an awesome week, everybody. I hope your reach is high and your engagement is strong, and we'll see you on live lunch next week. See you all later. Wave for Emily. I wonder if anyone ever waves back at this point.
Probably not.